Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I just want to ask all audience members to please mute yourselves. I will mute you or you. But just to reduce background noise. Thank you so much, everybody. Okay, great. Welcome, everybody. I think a few more people are going to trickle in, but I want to go ahead and get started. My name is Jillian Lee. I'm the librarian here at Center for Book Arts, and I had the pleasure of working with Caterina during her research fellowship last year. Center for Book Arts was founded in 1974. This is our 50th anniversary year. And for 50 years, we have been presenting workshops, exhibitions, and public programs such as this to bring the book arts in its many facets to the world. The Book Art Research Fellowship was a program launched in 2020, where 2 fellows are selected every year to do scholarly research using Center for Book Arts collections. We have 3 collections here at CBA: the Fine Art Collection, the Reference Collection, and the Archive Collection. And from this collection of more than 6,000 items, every fellow creates a presentation and project using mostly, but not all, those materials, and also the book world that is here at CBA. Feel free to get in touch with me if you're interested in more information about this fellowship, or check out our website. If you're interested in doing research at Center for Book Arts, that's also something that I would love to talk to you about. But for now, I would like to present Caterina Stamou, who will be presenting The Other Stitches. Caterina Stamou is a researcher, curator, and poet living in Athens, Greece. Through her research and curatorial work, she seeks to highlight how art interacts with various forms of community building and political action by creating an open space for renegotiating our relationship with language, history, communal living, and society. She recently curated the group exhibition, The Poem Returns as an Echo, Dialogues with Teresa Hak-Kyung Cha, 1951 to 1982, hosted at the Contemporary Greek Art Institute with the support of the National Gallery Alexandros Soutsos Museum. She is a PhD candidate in the Department of English at the National and Kapodistrian University of Athens. Thank you. And has been awarded the Stavros Niarchos Foundation Artist Fellowship by Artworks 2022 in curating. I will now pass it off to Caterina for The Other Stitches.
Thank you, Jillian, very much for this opportunity. Hello, everyone. It's so nice to be here with you. So I'm going to start. I'm going to share my screen. Is everyone seeing the? Okay, so you all see the PowerPoint now, right? Okay, so The Other Stitches, Forms of Collective Repair in Contemporary Book Arts. Why stitching? This research is born out of a personal belief that books can have a reparative effect in someone's life. Taking into consideration the ongoing discussions around repair as an emergent topic in a wide range of fields, I look at repair, an often misappropriated concept, through its diverse manifestations at the intersection of art making, community, politics, and lived experience. Inviting us to consider contemporary book arts as enactments of collective repair, my aim is not to claim that book arts are inherently reparative. Rather, I seek to conceptualize their potential material, performative, and affective registers through a reparative scope, to build on the assembled works, methodologies, resonances, and trajectories, and to grasp how their overlapping formulations can guide us towards different sociopolitical imaginaries. I use the metaphor of stitching to unravel the relationality and connectivity that the research on repair employs, highlighting thereby the reconstructive force of reparative work itself. I have some anxiety. I think that you can feel it from the way I read, but it's going to be fine. Okay, thank you. So in such way, repair does not only evoke mending, restoring, and transformation, but also repair, as several scholars point. And together, associating and uniting seemingly different contexts, forms, and ideas by elaborating on their dialogical possibilities. Stitching can also be considered as a special mention to Evangelia Biza, an astonishing book artist and perhaps the most significant bookbinder of Greece. Evangelia's exceptional talent and commitment to her art was appreciated by few and received institutional recognition only until later in her life, perhaps because of the country's insufficient material support of book arts. Through an analogy with the physical act of stitching, the publishing practices and artist books under discussion emphasize a reconceptualization of repair, grounded not only on affect, but also, do you also see this thing that I have? Okay, so I think it's better now, right? Because before, okay. Let me fix this. Okay, so through an analogy with the physical act of stitching, the publishing practices and artist books under discussion emphasize a reconceptualization of repair grounded not only on affect, but also on materiality, memory, engagement, and loss. They call us to think how their strategies, gestures, and interests can be regarded as the hinges upon which experimental and informal methodologies interweave physical and symbolic holdings. The archival and relational threads I encountered during my on-site research at the Center for Book Arts last October, as one would expect, reflect smaller and bigger histories, mostly from the United States. However, they echo across different geographies. The following question has been central in my exploration. How can we reconsider repair beyond the bias of complicit depoliticization and reform in ways that it resonates with our present political urgencies and affective needs? And what are the material and symbolic reconfigurations that reveal repair's pertinence to the entanglements of art and politics? Following the imperative of restitched imagination, to borrow the phrase from Greek book artist, poet, and scholar Astra Papachristodoulou, the imaginary stitching that follows attempts to approach the reparative through a politically informed, intersectional, and holistic way. Stitch 2. On reparative reading, or to be holistic is to provide arguments against definition and limitation. In seeking to improvise a reparative reading approach of book arts theory, to paraphrase Charles Alexander in his introduction to the collection, Talking the Boundless Book, Art, Language, and the Book Arts, I look at book arts as holistic art objects whose intellectual stance stems from a desire to undo the dominant compartmentalized forms of knowledge, pedagogy, art making, and criticism. Echoing Alexander's way of conceiving book arts as arguments against definition and limitation, a supposition that resonates with several other book art critics, one can pay attention to intersecting configurations of various disciplines. The field's unclassifiable character is one that refuses to be dictated by monistic, cultural, and critical conventions. Alexander pinpoints the field's possibility of performing oppositions against hegemonic structures in the hyper-marketized atmosphere of the book industry, while anticipating a boundless future of book arts theory and criticism. Other prominent critics embrace this perspective, framing book arts as cultural objects that behave disobediently towards normative critique. Thinking about the intertwinements of disobedience, materiality, interconnectedness, and criticism, how does a reparative form of reading might help us to better understand the current political stakes that book artists are addressing? It was around 1995, the same year that the Minnesota Center for Book Arts Symposium resulted in this compilation of essays talking the Boundless Book, that queer feminist literary critic Eve Kosofsky-Sedgwick is considered to have used the term reparative reading in public. The term that suggests a critical approach towards reparative effects as an alternative position to the entrenched forms of hegemonic critical thinking was developed and later published in Sedgwick's seminal essay, Paranoid Reading and Reparative Reading, or you so paranoid you think this essay is about you, which was written during the HIV crisis while Sedgwick was living with advanced breast cancer. By drawing this line of connection, one cannot avoid noticing a common denominator between Sedgwick's influential contribution and the new kind of critical language suggested by book art theorists, both directed towards what Diggins calls the discussion of an experience. It might therefore be interesting to wonder, how can the centering of experience through its pertinence to a deeper level of intimacy with the object of study reflect what is happening in our world? Based on the conjecture that the experience of book arts is determined by the object's haptic intimacy as a way of inhabiting new worlds, what kinds of affect, political spaces, and collective visions emerge from a relationship that refuses to contain itself in conventional forms of interpretation? Moving towards a holistic approach that uncovers the multiple layers of artistic creation, we can presumably ask, what is it that book arts invite us to repair in its concrete form when they perform cultural exercises through ephemeral, improvisational, and anti-authoritative ways? As Marian Sudnovsky, writer, archivist, and librarian at Wendy's Subway told me, I quote, "The books, the form, and the way that artists and writers are transmitting their information, that is the critical discourse. They are giving it to us, it's in their form." Page 3. The book is a world, the world is a book. To argue that the book is a world is to attest to the book's reconstructive dimension. That is not only because the book is an idiosyncratic account of the affective atmospheres of the world it seeks to expose, reflect on, or open up a dialogue with. As put by Stephen Clay, the book object is sometimes, and I quote, intensely personal, therefore universal and transformative, unquote. The transformative power of book arts often lies in their efforts to challenge conventional modes of production, tactility, embodiment, dissemination, authorship, and narrative. A striking example of this politically aware form of art making is the well-known publishing project Gender Fail by artist B. Oakley. In the preface of the powerful compilation of essays, A Decade of Queer and Trans Liberatory Writings, published earlier this year, the artist writes, I quote, "My hope is that these essays inspire you to future actions, dreams, hopes, and new worlds that center people and communities fighting for a world without colonialism, white supremacy, capitalism, ableism, and heteronormative oppression." Unquote. What are the workings of world making in our current globalized sociopolitical climate? Paraphrasing feminist literary theorist Robin Wigman, reparation is about building micro-worlds of survival and mutual aid as an alternative to a present condition that is dictated by loss and trauma. In doing so, one does not reproduce the vigilant stand against repetition, as Wigman puts it, but imagines new affective and organizing modes. Artist and critic Audrey Niffenegger has also something interesting to say about the art of making books. To make books is to create physical forms of ideas, I quote. All artists do this, of course, but the book has been the body of human thought for many centuries. And when we make unusual books, artist books, we are messing with that body. This can incite strong feelings in readers. We identify with books, and when artists transgress against books, it's a serious thing, unquote. What does it mean to mess with a body of human thought that is patterned by the interlocking violent mechanisms of coloniality, racism, patriarchy, and carcerality? What grammatical, symbolic, material, and affective alterities can be enacted when, to use Joanna Drucker's words, I quote, the cultural icon of the book as the law and the word, unquote, gets rejected, subverted, abolished, and transformed. As Hypatia Vourloumis and Gigia Argyropoulou write in their article, Repeating Brokenness, Repair as Non-Reproductive Occupation, Speculation, and Improvisation, and I quote, "In mending things that alter those things in unpredictable ways, the aim is not to return them to their original state and function, but to create new forms where making and repairing are one and the same," unquote. Clarissa Sligh's project, Transforming Hate, is exemplary of this line of action. The artist's book is the resultant publication of an artwork that the artist presented at the exhibition Speaking Volumes, Transforming Hate, at the Holter Museum in 2008, after accepting the invitation by the Montana Human Rights Network to create art that would respond, incorporate to, or transform the pages from white supremacist books. As the artist recounts, "I said I would. The box of the books arrived and sat for months untouched in a corner of my studio. Despite having looked into the eyes of hatred, of having questioned its assumptions many times, I was afraid to open that box, could not approach white supremacy," unquote. Gradually, the initial feelings were replaced by the desire to explore, and I quote, "what it was like for me to turn hateful words into a beautiful art object," unquote. Through the course of the book, we confront the process of the meditative folding. The image of the box opened alongside the artist's narrative text about her past experiences and memories of racial segregation. The folding of origami is followed by the unfolding of recurring violence at the intersections of racism, sexism, poverty, and homophobia, followed again by the repetitive folding of the pages into origami cranes and the recurring question, can it be transformed? This project, inspired by the artist's visit to the Hiroshima Peace Memorial, resulted in nearly 1,000 cranes that were folded and exhibited at the Holder Museum. I quote, "What evolved from that expression," Sligh says, "helped me understand more fully the many levels of oppression and violence at the intersections of race, gender, class, and sexual orientation. Each folded origami crane had been a prayer. Folding one crane after another had become a chant," unquote. Although it almost feels impossible to imagine something beautiful coming out of the multiple systems of oppression, especially in the current climate of witnessing unbearable grief and loss, Sligh's way of exploring personal and historical memory emphasizes the way survival is bound to longing and hope, and it points to the necessity of going backward, of exposing and materially engaging with history to open up the possibilities towards repair and transformation. Rowan Renee's astonishing work, No Spirit for Me, Case File, year 2021, was born out of a different kind of laborious work which involved the use of analog printing machinery. No Spirit for Me appropriates the form of a legal accordion file to address the gaps, limitations, and biases inherent to the criminal justice system. Initially created as a series of photographs and presented as an installation in a fictitious police evidence room, No Spirit for Me consists of 10 photolithograph prints that appropriate forensic documents along with the idea of the family album, accompanied by the artist's descriptive text. Made during Rowan's workspace artist in residence at the Center for Book Arts in 2021, the artist's book has also been part of the monumental group exhibition Marking Time in the Age, Art in the Age of Mass Incarceration, curated by Nicole Fleetwood, which I was lucky enough to visit at the Schomburg Center during my stay in New York last October. This is where this photo is from. Rowan writes, "In 2019, I acquired the contents of my father's criminal case file from the Florida State Attorney who prosecuted him in 2008. 4 years into serving a 15-year sentence, at the age of 82, my father passed away in prison. Because of shame around his crimes and conviction, at the time of his death, I knew very little about the details of his case. Access to the official records, court transcripts, procedural documents, and police evidence photographs offered me the state's version of truth. As I read its contents, I found a narrative steeped in bias, fear, and condemnation, not justice. I see in No Spirit for Me a striking dialogical relation with Saidiya Hartman's question, and I quote, 'How does one revisit the sin of subjection without replicating the grammar of violence?' Unquote. Encountering the work, one is faced with the attempt of dismantling the evidential power of the criminal case file through a methodology that exposes the carceral state's perpetual violence and inadequacy to provide justice for the survivors. In a subtle way, No Spirit for Me grapples with a history of personal trauma. Through the physical process of intense manual labor, the new affective registers inscribed in the accordion perform a conscious act of refusal against the carceral state's control over one's own past memories and emotions. The work's restorative narrative is oriented towards the recovery of self-determination, generating an abolitionist vision of repair grounded in the healing force of transformative justice. This process is indicative of how a reparative practice works towards an exit from carceral logic, refusing to reproduce its destructive and punitive mechanisms. During my personal communication with Rowan, for which I am deeply grateful to them and Caterina for putting us in contact, I was rather inspired by their approach to art, as it is centered on the values of community, healing, and generosity. I quote, "What has been relevant on my work and I use it as a guide towards healing." What has been relevant on my work as an artist is that I use it as a guide towards healing, to process the shame, the grief, and the complex emotions, unquote. Rowan's practice has been deeply informed by their research and training on transformative and restorative justice. In a previous project at Research Art Organization in Brooklyn, they used the art of weaving as a way of initiating conversations about abolition and ways in which people can reconcile harm in community. Rowan's engaging with abolition comes out of a visceral need. I quote, "I think craft gives you a way to process things through your body. I do a lot of different things, but everything is very labor-intensive, repetitive, and process-oriented stuff. Sitting at the printing press, turning out prints is similar to being in the dark room. It is work that becomes almost mindless repetitions, a way that you can tap into your embodied trauma and process it. It is something that comes before language. It can be a tool in the process of putting something that is unspeakable into words. An art therapist might have something to say about that," unquote. Stage 4, towards an abolitionist standpoint of repair. Moving across an abolitionist trajectory, one can gain valuable knowledge around book art's attempt to address the multiple damages caused by the prison industrial complex. Undanced Dances Through Prison Walls During a Pandemic offers a different yet significant account of anti-carceral horizons. Can repair be enacted in the embodiment of fugitive gestures of survival that disrupt the temporality of life in confinement? The book, which was part of the exhibition of Smink books, organized at the Center for Book Arts last fall, is the compilation of choreographic pieces deeply imagined and written down by incarcerated dancers of the California Rehabilitation Center. When the California State Prison shut down programming and visitation in 2020 due to COVID-19, the incarcerated dancers classes with choreographer, educator, and prison abolition activist Suki Branfman, who edited this book, suddenly stopped. The new added restrictions in their lives led to the revision of their initial choreographic project and resulted to a number of written pieces that visualize their dance choreographies as imagined from their bunks. The valuable knowledge one can gain from such a work, I think, that highlights the fact that temporality, embodiment, pedagogy, imagination, and small acts of survival are integral in the prefiguration of abolitionist and reparative work. and to paraphrase Mia Mingus, should not be unacknowledged. In one of the written pieces, which is written by dancer Clinton, we read, "I really miss leaving my inhibitions by coming to dance on Monday nights. Prison living truly limits the range of my character and behavior. When we had danced the first 3 weeks, I would have to decompress for the first 30 to 40 minutes to open my mind, sharing amongst the group. In fact, it was not until we began to physically move around, dance, shake, shimmy, smile, stomp, jump, and swing that I truly felt a sentiment of freedom to act out and share my inner thoughts. I now realize I don't even have free thoughts while in my dorm. Choreographing my stories, dancing only took place in the gym while floating around my dance mates. I just can't get myself to dance in my dorm. The freedom to move about, mind and body, is so difficult to reach. I really miss the experience we had." Dancing is imagined as an embodied fugitive act in another work that is worth mentioning, Dancing Over Dark Waters, a collaborative artist book by Gwen Harrison, Sue Anderson, and Peter Lysiotis that revisits the colonial history of Cockatoo Island in Sydney, which was a penal colony, reformatory, and industrial school. Drawing, I'll drink some water. Drawing on archipelagic thinking, the writer's poetic texts attempt a reparative rewriting of history by visualizing singing and dancing as forms of recovery and resistance. Their approach makes a direct connection between the impact of colonial legacies on our present fractured worlds of new forms of confinement and the border violence against refugees. We read in one of the pieces, "The dance is courage itself, and the song is generosity itself. I cry out to the passing century, what have we learned? But the century goes on its way, perhaps still believing that walls, detention centers, and coils of razor wire can fence in the new day. And in the slipstream of the passing century, I realize what it is I've learned. I've learned what happens when people fashion ladders from the stakes which have been driven into their hearts." Another significant publication that addresses the carcerality of our present, a work that I encountered at CBA thanks to Gillian's recommendation, is Holding Vigil, published in 2022 by Thick Press. Thick Press is a collaborative publishing project between social worker Erin Segal and designer Julie Cho, who have described their practice as follows. I quote, working very slowly, we make unusual books and booklets about care work and the work of care. We hope our books contribute to culture change, and we hope our caring publishing practices support care workers and activists, unquote. Holding Vigil recounts the lived experience of a friend's execution on Texas death row, as written in the diary of Ricky Cummings, who has been wrongfully convicted by the Texas juridical system. The book undoes the conventional limits around whose voices and stories are worth of visibility and allowed to get published, told, shared, and distributed. As Ricky writes, nothing is said about how we, as a nation, can be more proactive about saving said person's life. And there's nothing that accounts for the lived experiences of the men and women on death row who witnessed those they consider friends being walked to their deaths, unquote. This publishing reinforces the capacious possibilities that an interdisciplinary rather than a hyper-specialized collaborative approach can offer. It attempts to open up an intentional dialogue around social issues in ways that they can possibly reach a wider audience. Both Undance Dances Through Prison Walls during a pandemic and Holding Vigil share some overlapping trajectories with the next project under discussion. Publishing the Present, an archive of mutual care and action, it is a digital archive of independent publishing created in response to the ripple effect of George Floyd uprising in 2020. This project was curated by Wendy Subway as a response to an invitation from Emily Carr University and the Libby Lash Gold Gallery. Marian Shudnovsky, the archivist behind this work, gave me some amazing insights. I quote, "As a librarian, and because I spend a lot of time thinking about how printed matter is categorized, archived, and held, I was feeling a lot of anxiety that there were so many amazing resources circulating online. Where were they going to go? All these amazing artists and publishers, activists and organizers, they're sharing these resources online as they should, but there's no centralized place for people to locate them. And that was feeling very urgent to me," unquote. Marian sees archiving as care work. I quote, "It's caring for someone's legacy. It's very intimate. And often people of color and marginalized people are not afforded the same intimacy by a very, very predominantly white field," unquote. This project instigated the making of an additional peer review by Wendy Subway. The first, which was published in 2018, in collaboration with Press, an independent publisher from Baltimore, was made with the goal of speaking with other independent publishers about their practice and community collaborations. And so we thought, to quote Marian, "What a perfect opportunity to do a second peer review, to talk to publishers who were featured in the archive and to build a publication around their website relationships," unquote. Drawing from a publishing lineage centered on social justice, practical solidarity, and abolitionist struggle, this publication is very much a testament to its moment, as Marian describes it. The small presses included in the book are Small Tune Press from Hong Kong, Queer Archive work from Providence, Rhode Island, Homey House Press from Los Angeles, Thick Press from Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, Co-Conspirator Press from Los Angeles, and Antenna Air from Houston, Texas. Stage 5, the politics of collective repair. In my reading of recent theoretical developments on repair and artist publications that focus on the values of their independent publishing strategies, I pinpoint an interesting dialogical relation. In the critical work about the politics of collective repair, Valeria Graziano and Kim Trogal encourage us to rethink how repair emerges as a capacious activity that has been activating the politicization of localized communities. They argue that the stance of contemporary reparative practices based on coalition building, collaboration, sharing knowledge, and anti-productivism creates sites that underline a relation between life and social movements and offers accessible formative tools to working class subjectivities. As Joanna Drucker has put it, I quote, "The idea of the independent publisher is closely linked to that of the activist artist," unquote. This very much resonates with various artist collectives and projects that reclaim the radical legacies of printmaking and bookmaking, as integral parts of their political action. Half letterpress and temporary services is also a striking example of a publishing activity that addresses the holistic scope of collective repair. The practice lies in the intertwinements of creative autonomy, sustainability and reuse, infrastructural critique, abolitionary struggle, community histories, the politics of zine-making, and collaborative strategies. Graziano and Trogal frame repair as a politically conscious practice that calls for greater responsibility around practices of maintenance and recycling, while reconfiguring the everyday by fashioning a deeper dialogue between pedagogy, mutual aid, and conviviality. In the catalog of the exhibition Palpas Portal, Socially Engaged Hand Papermaking, organized by Center for Book Arts in 2017, we read, "Paper was one of the first industrial products to incorporate recycled materials. So it makes sense that artists who make paper by hand would politicize or consider the symbolic dimensions of the ingredients of their labor. Through dialogic platforms and collaborative craft, such artists can creatively assert the deep relevance of conviviality, skill sharing, and the printed word," unquote. The artists exhibited in Palpas Portal approached paper as a material that can enact multiple possibilities. Projects such as Peace Paper Project and Combat Paper highlight the therapeutic impact of paper making and utilize it as a method of trauma therapy for veterans and localized communities. Love Positive Women, a project started by Jessica Whitbread in 2013, uses the Valentine's Day as an occasion to fight HIV stigma through the creation of hundreds of handmade paper cards that are sent to women who live with HIV. And Seeds in Service, the ecofeminist project of Maggie Packett and Melissa Potter, employs methodologies of urban agriculture to address the interweaving between gender violence and extraction of natural resources. How arts call us to think about the interweaving between a different way of relating and the form that, to quote Wigman again, is centered around suspicion, is centered around sensation, not suspicion. Book art theorist Betty Bright writes, I quote, "Unlike most art, an artist's book requires touch to unlock its evocative otherness. Reading a book involves the tactile, even emotional experience of paging through it. How then have the aesthetic complexities of the book form affected its acceptance as an art form? Put another way, what do the problems that the artist's book poses to the art world tell us about the limitations of that very world?" Unquote. Perhaps the reason why book arts remain largely untheorized, especially in the case of Greece, lies in that evocative otherness, and in the fact that certain established forms of critical thinking do not encourage to look at ephemeral forms and seemingly minor cultural objects as enactments of deeper affective and political layers. However, it is exactly because of this texture of more intimate and informal encounters that we can develop a reparative relationship with art and reshape our worlds on a deeper level. Final stage. The organizing of librarians, archivists, and bookmakers that collect, circulate and create printed matter in solidarity with Palestine is a valuable response to the present-day urgency. The work of librarians and archivists with Palestine, a solidarity-based transnational network initiated in 2013, provides sources and reports with the purpose to preserve archival materials from and about Palestine. Such initiatives, to mention also the Palestine Solidarity Archive in Greece, are major contributions to the understanding of books as critical for resistance, memory, and repair. Stitching together forms of repair requires a tangible and direct approach towards things, a praxis that goes beyond the realm of theory. To anticipate a world of reparative readings is to see books as potential gauzes directly applied on our wounded skins. Libraries are sanctuaries. They are places for recovering lost and speculating new affects, places for slowdown, reflection, and pause, places that need protection, places where people can weave potential histories, places where we go to find hope and to heal, places that, to quote Suhir Hamad, affirm life. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Caterina. That was wonderful.
Thank you.
We have a few minutes for questions. If anybody wants to drop a question in the chat or raise their hand. Please feel free. I have a question for you, Caterina. I'm wondering, I saw one of those last pictures that was in your presentation. Was the table
Which one?
It was the table in the print shop just covered in some of the materials that you were looking at, which was, by the way, a small
Yes.
fraction of the materials that Caterina looked at. I want to know if there's anything that was particularly surprising that you encountered in your research at CBA or after, if there were any works that you weren't expecting to fall into this this umbrella of repair and bookmaking. Yeah.
Something that was very enriching, which is something though that I did not include in this presentation, because I tried, to frame it based on a quite specific theoretical framework, was to encounter and learn about the work of Robert Blackburn printmaking workshop, which is something that I did not know, and I discovered through the Center for Book Arts. Something else which was very striking for me is that in most of in all of the artists actually and the publishing projects that I presented, I think that there is a very strong a very strong political awareness about how intertwined political action, reparative work for some, and publishing are. I mean, how tight, how interrelated they are, in ways also that they that they experiment with it in various ways, also aesthetically. These are the things that come to my mind right now. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
We have one question in the chat from Jess Sutherland, who asks, Can you describe what having access to the CBA archive was like?
It was really exciting. It's an amazing place. It was really, really exciting. Yes, just excitement. I don't know what else to say about it. And it's and what is also really magical is that you know, like the how many stories, how many relations can be unfolded by one specific object. I mean, if there is you know, some archival information about it, because I guess that there are also things about, you know, about that lack some substantial information. But you know, like when you find one object, like one artist book or one person, that can lead to many others. And this is yeah, this shows how rich you know, this world is.
Wonderful. Oh, great. We have another question. This might be the last one. We might have time for one more afterwards. But Darian Razdar, who I will say is a book art research fellow this year, has asked, I'm fascinated with how book artists use the unique affordances of the book form to convey messages in only the way a book can. I know you touched on this in your presentation already, but could you elaborate on this idea in one or two of the artist book examples in your presentation? How might the artist book differ from an exhibition or film, for example, in its reparative possibilities?
Mm.
Thanks, Darian.
Thank you. Yes. They don't they are not necessarily different from other forms of art. However, what I think that I find fascinating in many of these artists is you know, how how much faith they have in their networks and communities, in ways that that they develop one would say a solidarity economy. And also the book has the aspect of, you know, of tactility, intimacy, and this is why I tried to draw this you know, this narrative starting from the term of reparative reading of Sedgwick. So and something else that it is very interesting, but I'm not saying that practices like this cannot be found also in other you know, in other forms of art, but because the art, like the visual art world is very much dictated, it's very much co-opted, you know, by its own financialization. The artist book is a different world. Like, I mean, it still is, of course, you know, very much co-opted, but there still are practices that are very much grounded on or like that they are reclaiming practices of autonomy. And in my thinking of you know, framing something as a reparative, I tried to do it in a holistic way. I mean, not to look only at you know, at its form, or not to look only at it as an aesthetic object, but also to look at at what's behind it. I mean, at the process of its production, you know, in what settings and with what intentions these works are made. Yeah. Yeah, and maybe some like a couple of words of works that do this. For example, yeah, I think that because these are only some, in indicative examples that I found in the collection, and there are many more people who have this, who follow similar imperatives in their works. Yeah, yeah. Yes. For example, I think that the book by Thick Press, Holding Vigil, or the other book, Undanced Dances, by Smink Smink. But yeah, thank you so much. Oh my God, I was so nervous. I hope that you understood what I was reading. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. You're also so very kind.
Wonderful. That brings us almost to the hour. And so I just
Thank
want
you.
to
Thank
thank you
you.
one more time, Caterina, for a wonderful presentation.
Thank you so much for everything.
Really inspiring.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you everybody for joining us. Please visit
Thank you so much.
centerforbookarts.org if you would like any more information about any of the programs that we offer, including the Book Art Research Fellowship.
Thank you.
The Pine Tree Foundation for supporting the fellowship. And thank you again, everybody, for attending. And thank you so much, Caterina. It was really amazing.
Thank you, Jillian. Thank you so much.